Thank you all so much. Sounded so beautiful playing there. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And you all can feel free to move about. Welcome, family, friends, and associates. We have come here to celebrate the life, love, and legacy of our beloved Scott Dreyer. Life, love, legacy. Scott began his life in Brandon, Florida, maturing into the kind, faithful, strong man he became. I'm sure his siblings have many stories you could tell, really good stories, juicy stories we'd all love to hear. His life consists of service to his community and nation. He served with distinction in the United States Army, and upon leaving the military, worked hand in hand with his father in their business. In the early 2000s, he further served as a teacher at Mulrennan Middle School. Today, many Mulrennan Mustangs are here to show our gratitude for that service. This is where Scott and I met, quickly becoming good friends. I was salt and he was pepper. We bore these nicknames in irony to show other people that in life, color does not define brothers. Scott's life at Mulrennan was one that tremendously added blessings to the lives of so many people, young and old. A life is well lived when that life touches other lives. Scott touched multiple lives at Progress Village Middle, Earl Leonard High, and Beth Shields Middle Schools. Today, many of you from these schools also grieve with us. We're part of a family because we're Scott's brothers and sisters. I remember watching Paul in and out of the hallways and classrooms at Mulrennan. These times showed us at Mulrennan Scott's life as a father, and what a wonderful, loving father he was. Paul, when you become that high-power executive at Publix, I want you to remember us little people and also carry with you the love your father showed and gave you. Scott's love as a father had room enough to accept an additional son in Zach. Over car parts and truck fixings, Zach got to experience Scott's fatherly nature as well. Zach, every time you lift your F-150's hood, remember two things. Firstly, you have the best truck made by man since you have a Ford. I was hoping that would go over well. And two, Scott loved you like his own. Scott's life dramatically changed for the best when he met Amanda. With Amanda, he would not only have life, but a beautiful life. The short number of years now we know that they've had contain within them an eternity of love. That love is so strong as to carry on beyond space and time. Amanda, you are the one who changed his mind about love. Amanda, you are the one who also made his last 5 years his best years. Scott was a man of love, who showed love, gave love, lived love. As his brother and friend, I must state what we all know. Scott's love was an acquired taste. At first meeting, that straightforward, dogmatic personality of our beloved Scott could make a person question what he or she was dealing with within this man known as Mr. Dreyer. Yet in the course of time, one would easily see and conclude his was a love of the best kind. It was straightforward love. It was a dogmatic love. No one could ask for a better friend, brother, father, and in Amanda's case, lover. So now we are left with his legacy. His legacy stems from every memory each of us has of him. We cannot recount them all day today, neither can we tell them all day today. Yet we carry them within our hearts, and as a moment by moment they pop into our consciousness, there will be perhaps a tear. That is okay. Go ahead and cry, for a good man deserves a good cry. Perhaps a smile. That is okay, for a loving man deserves a great smile. There might even today be a laugh, and that is okay too. For a man such as Scott Dreyer deserves a hearty laugh. No one can define how you remember this dear friend of ours. We each will carry his legacy in a matter to which we choose. No one has the right to tell you how to remember your beloved Scott Dreyer. Yet, at a risk of contradicting my last statement, might I suggest a few things as we celebrate Scott Dreyer's legacy. When we celebrate, may we live our lives in service to other people whom we meet. When we remember, may we have straightforward and dogmatically show love. When we build the foundations of our legacies, may it be that kind that in the future will result in loved ones gathered in a room like this one, shedding a tear, cracking a smile, spreading a laugh that will say we lived a good life, that we practiced love, and we have a legacy that will go on for the ages. Now may God's grace, the God of all comfort, give you each comfort through his presence, through his love, and his grace. This morning, we're here to celebrate, and you can go ahead and celebrate in your manner. And we're going to invite each person who would like to share with this group anything you would like to share. And don't you be ashamed if you do not feel you have the words, because it's very difficult to have words that can sum up a life. But the way this man lived, he already said enough. And so this morning, I want to open the floor for you. And in fact, I'm going to pick the first person, Christine Pfeiffer. I want you to come on up. Christine worked with Scott at Morenin, and she was close to him as a dear sister. And so I'm just going to hand the microphone over to her. Thank you, Christine.
So we've made a family. John, I'm other mother. To Scott, I was Mama Bear. One of my most embarrassing moments was when Earl Leonard came to the school and Scott introduced me as Mama Bear. I said, Scott, I have a name. It's not professional. He said, you're always going to be Mama Bear. So I'm here to honor the son called me Mama Bear. Friendship, I actually looked up the dictionary definition. And dictionaries really like to fool you a little bit. They say things like, the state of being a friend. Well, friendship is far deeper than that. So Scott knew I read a lot, and he always tested my brain a little bit to see if he could stump me on some piece of knowledge that maybe we should know as special ed teachers. And fortunately, thank goodness I read, because I had a lot of answers. But sometimes we don't always have the answers. But as these days have passed since he left his mortal shell, I realize that he will live on in our hearts and in our minds in many ways. But friendship now has become a verb for me. And you say, well, how can that be? Well, in the English language, it's a noun. But Scott knew that I had a great affiliation for my friends who were of Native American culture. And one of the Native American cultures I read about recently talked about so many things in their language that were verbs that we in English describe as nouns. So friendship is about loving, which is a verb. If we love, that's something we do. Love can also be a noun. Love is sharing, and we shared many good moments. We broke bread at the table, we shared stories, we commiserated with each other. We celebrated sometimes with families. So as I see some of his family here, we celebrated some moments like his graduation when he got his master's degree. We celebrated some Christmases together. And there's just so many wonderful little stories that I could tell you about my role as Mama Bear. But as I speak, I've written a lot of notes and I haven't quite looked at them yet. But a couple of things I want to share. A magical moment was when he met Amanda. And because I was a treasured friend, I got to see that love unfold. And I was so happy for my friend. to find a partner in life that he could grow with and experience that deep love. He was very proud to show me a little booklet she had put together of photographs of some of their most treasured first moments together. And it just brought a smile to my face because it was the epitome of happiness. I got to see the first peek at the engagement ring. It was like I had to approve that it was beautiful and wonderful, and it was. And I'm so glad that Amanda received this beautiful gift from Scott. Scott was exactly who he said he was. There were no bones about who he was. You couldn't second guess it because he was very straightforward and he made no excuses about it. So as we go through these days of trying to reminisce and find those good, very good, happy moments we've had, I am also reminded that there's things about the past that we can share. And as our lives are entwined by this memory moment, I'm going to mention words that I call her my aunt, and she's been my aunt since I was about 3. We were a church family for many years, and we've come back together in the last 12 years. And she's 97. And she's getting to that point where she is going to see the sunset of her life. But she said, you know, Christy, people don't study poetry anymore, but these words come to me. God gave us memories so we could have roses in December. And I will hold dear those memories of good friendship because it's so very valued. Find good friends. Hold them close to you. Remember them in a good way. Thank you, Scott, for being my beloved friend.
Beautiful. Would there be someone else that would like to speak? Someone else?
Hi. Can you hear me, Denise? Can you hear me good? My name is Tim Ducker. Excuse me. I had the privilege of being Scott's principal over at Mullen Middle School for a number of years. And I just wanted to get up and tell kind of a little story that kind of magnifies and summarizes some of the ways that Scott lived his life. When I first got to Mullen, and I don't mean to embarrass anyone here who's a teacher, but some of the issues that we had when I first got there, we had some issues with ESE paperwork. And for those of you who are in the business, you know that that drives a lot of money. So we had to get that part right. We couldn't get our paperwork in on time, and so I thought to myself, who do we have here on staff that will drive all of the other teachers crazy until they get it right? Found just the guy. I'm not kidding. When I first got there, the paperwork for ESE, we got dinged on it every single FTE. That's when we get our money. We got dinged on it every single FTE. I made Scott the ESE supervisor of our school. We were perfect every time. I even had some of the teachers who would come to me and complain, he's driving me crazy. And I would be so empathetic with them as I'm thinking to myself, this is perfect. It worked just the way I thought it would. Scott was awesome at the job because he was dogmatic. As the word I heard, he was intense. And if he had something he wanted to get done, it was going to get done. And it didn't matter what had to take place, Scott was going to get it done. And he stayed on it and on it and on it until it got done, and it was perfect. We got to the point of where when we went to FTE, we were one of those schools who didn't have to go to the tables to get checked because we were pre-checked. We were perfect every time. Scott made that happen. And that is just a good example of the kind of guy he was. Like you said earlier, he was the guy that he was, and he wasn't going to change. He was his guy every day. And you got to love that. You got to love that about a guy, because he knew who he was, and he was going to get the things done that he needed to get done, and he did. So I just wanted to share that. Also, Paulie, I will tell you, your dad was so proud of you. Your dad was so proud of you. I would be in the office sometimes, we would be talking, and something would come up in conversation, even when you were just a little squirt. And he loved you like no tomorrow. So hold that, buddy, because as many of us have experienced in here already, those times that are very painful memories become very sweet. And buddy, your dad loved you like crazy. So anyway, just want to say thank you.
Good morning.
My name is Stephen Eichhorn. I met Scott when he was at Momentum, and I had to follow Tim because Tim is telling the truth. Paperwork was not good at Momentum, and he said, "You got to screen this guy for me. You got to go through the ESE specialist screening." So we put Scott through the screening, and he passed, and he became the specialist. And he was dogmatic about the paperwork. Scott and I shared a couple things. We both were in the military. We both started teaching later in our careers. And he always called me boss. Even after I retired 8 years ago, every time I saw him, he called me boss. He was an honorable man who respected authority and did his job to the best of his ability. And the world is a sadder place without Scott in it. Thank you.
Next person.
Good morning. I'm Minister Linda Monroe, also known as Miss Monroe. Here at Shields, I was here a couple of years. I really didn't write anything down. I just wanted to just speak from my heart regarding Mr. Dreyer. So a lot of you all know who are here from Shields know that I retired. After 42 years of being an educator, I got an opportunity now to get a little rest. But my last year here, I was the next door neighbor to Mr. Dreyer. And I just want to share, the word eulogy means to speak well of. So every day of our lives, we're all writing our eulogy. So I want to just take a page from his life and say that for me, he was the best helper. And you might take that a little lightly, but in this business, as an educator, we need helpers that will support. And he was one of the greatest supporters that I have had in my entire career. Whatever I needed, he was there. Ms. Monroe, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? I didn't need a lot of help teaching, but the technology, everybody knew that was not my thing. So I was not going to do it and say, Dreyer, tell me again, what do I need to do? And he was always there to support. And in this business, even little things like, can you watch my class while I run to the restroom? So as an educator, you knew that was something that we needed help with. So he would open my door and he would say, Miss Monroe. I said, I got you. So he would run to the restroom. I would open my door and I said, Dreyer. He said, I got you, I'll watch your class. But he would literally watch my class. he would walk out of his room, he was staying in my room until I got back. Now, I didn't do that. When I said, I got you, I would walk over to his classroom and look, and I would go back to doing what I was doing. But he was such a great help. And I'm going to share this one little thing. Oh, also, I need to say this to Mr. Dreyer. He talked about you all the time. I knew when you guys had a special dinner. I knew when you guys were going to a special little outing. He was so proud of you. Right? He was so proud of you. He talked about you a lot. Always had great things to say during lunchtime about you. So I felt like I really got to know you through him. So, what else did I want to say? I got sidetracked from that. But anyway, Mr. Dreyer, this is what I wanted to say. The last day of school, I had this vision of just walking out of Shields, turning my lights off, just driving down into the sunset. It didn't work that way. For some reason, 3 of my classes did not get into computer with the grades. I have been doing this forever. So I was so frustrated. I was so upset. So he unlocks my door, he comes in, and he sees my face. And he said, Ms. Monroe, what's the matter? I said, the grades are not in here. He said, Ms. Monroe, I will help you. I said, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'll do it. I was frustrated, y'all. And so he said, I'll stay here and help you. So I had to use my Ms. Monroe voice. Dreyer, go home. I got this. He still stayed there for a few more minutes. That was the kind of person he was. He knew I was upset, but he wanted to stay there and make sure that I was okay. We need more Mr. Dryers to actually know your colleague is okay. Your colleague is okay. I'm here for you. We need some more of that type of spirit as an educator. So my question to you, what are you writing in your own eulogy?
I'm trying to avoid saying praise the Lord because I know it ain't church, but if I do, well, praise the Lord. That's what I'm talking about. Will there be another person? Someone else. Some lovely stories, lovely sharing.
Good afternoon. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mrs. Fisher, Deanna Fisher, principal here at Shields. Actually, former student of Mr. Tim Duckers. He was my science teacher at Eisenhower years ago. Just had to say that. And I say that for a couple of things, is that when we become educators, it becomes part of our identity. So when Amanda came to us and we were trying to help her through and process what was happening that took all of us by surprise, and she said, the one thing that I just can't find is a space to celebrate Scott's life. And I said, well, it's not much, but if you want to use the Shields cafeteria, you absolutely can. I think it epitomizes, who he is. Again, it's a kid's cafeteria. It has decorations that kids put up. But it's part of our identity as educators and the impact that we make on so many important lives. And he really did. And everything that has been said about Mr. Dreyer is so true. He was dogmatic. He just pursued things to the end. He never gave up. He was there whenever you needed him, and you didn't even have to ask. The students often came to me complaining, but those students that came to me complaining were also the first ones that created shirts and wore them around campus to remember him and to make sure that everyone else remembered him. He was amazing. But the great thing about being an educator is that your legacy lives on. Your legacy lives on in your students. Your legacy lives on in your coworkers and the teachers and the individuals that you impact every day. One of the very tough things that I had to do the week after Mr. Dreyer passed away is I actually had to go and present with my math coach, Ms. Tiffany Webb. We had to present to a group of other principals and coaches about the effectiveness of our math PLCs, because specifically, my boss came out and was able to observe Mr. Dreyer leading his math PLC. And it was already planned before Scott passed away, but we were including the video that the district made of him running a PLC. And so it just reminded me, even though it was sad to see that video and share that moment with other principals and coaches, it just reminded me of the importance of what we do each and every day, because we have a legacy that does live on even after we're gone. So Mr. Dreyer is going to be missed. He is missed, but he is certainly not forgotten, and his work is still impacting so many lives.
Thank you so much for giving us a space to celebrate Scott. That is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Maggie Mixon, and I come from the district office, 6-8 Math. As you just heard from our principal here at Shields, I was very fortunate to be able to capture this legacy that Scott had with his PLC. We were looking at demonstration videos and just putting a library together of little short videos of how it's done well in classrooms and in different settings of education, since we don't always see that, right? Best practices, what we call it. But we were looking to see the structure of a professional learning community when teachers talk and really get to discuss, what is going to be taught, what obstacles students are going to have, and things like that. And when Tiffany Webb, our math coach here, said, hey, come on out, we have a great PLC structure, I contacted Scott. He says, come on, girl, I got you, right? And he was leading the 7th grade PLC. And I said, we really want a video. So I came out my first initial visit just to see what he was like. I said, we really want a video. He's like, anytime. But my favorite part about Scott is he would text me. He's like, call me. It wasn't about a text. It wasn't about an email. It was about that human connection. And he was going to tell me how it really was, which was really exciting, because you want to be able to hear what's happening with students, what's happening with teachers. It's not just, we're going to get this project, but it was more that human element. In every single conversation that I had with him, somehow he brought in the family, the love for education, the love for math, which to me is very inspirational. But again, I leave you with that message of what kind of human connection are we going to have? Not just an email, not just a text, but that phone call, that visit. And that's what stays with me. Thank you.
The next person. I'm just thinking, as teachers, most of us are educators, I'm thinking this is a good time to turn to your shoulder partner and discuss about, I'm joking, I'm so joking. Unless you want to do that, you can share with your shoulder partner, and then I'm seriously, I'm joking.
Keep it really short. Scott was my brother. He complained about all that friggin' paperwork so much. Like hours I spent on the phone with him complaining about the paperwork. had spring break off, and we always went on spring break. So we did a lot of camping trips together. Those are some of my favorite memories. And Amanda, I never realized what a sappy schmuck my brother was until he met you. He used to call me 6 months, 8 months before an important date, before an anniversary, and say, okay, I'm getting her this, I want you to engrave this, I need something to go with this. And I'd say, well, tell me what you want on it. These things were so sappy. And it just made me love him more. And thank you for making him so happy. And Paul, what they said before about him being so proud of you. Like, you have no idea. He loved you so much. All right, that's enough. I gotta go cry.
Anyone else?
Good afternoon now, well, almost afternoon. I'm Mary Moore, and I also work with Scott at Mo Rennan. And he worked directly across from my office. And I can remember going to Mo Rennan and seeing Scott, and he and I had many conversations, as many of you at Mo Rennan know, I love to talk. But one thing I noticed about Scott was old school. Old school. And he reminded me of the teachers that when I left South Carolina that I worked with. He came to school immaculate every day, always clean shaven. Many days with a shirt and a tie. Many days with slacks. He looked like a teacher. He walked like a teacher. He made his presence known as a teacher. And that's a lot to say right now in the environment that we live in. Sometimes you don't know who you run into the school. And because times have changed, and that's a good thing. But one thing I liked about Scott, he didn't change. From the moment that I saw him until the last day I saw him, he always looked the part of a professional. And that's the first step. Also with our boys, sometimes I would hear him in there, he'd be raking them across the coals, like, Scott, what are you doing? But they would come out of that office and they would walk a little straighter. If not maybe, but that day, they would walk a little straighter. But they always addressed him as Mr. Dryer. You know, we addressed him as Mr. Dryer or Scott. And you can appreciate that in these days and times because Amanda, there was a purity about Scott and your love. It was something about when he met you, I saw a drastic change in Scott. He softened just a little bit when he met you. And what was so special about the meeting was you had kindred souls. Scott was a teacher, and he bonded with your son. He made it very known and personable to me as his neighbor across the hall that he had found his soulmate. And for that, I appreciate. When we all went to the special education recognition, some of us were nominated for awards, and Scott was there and I was there, and a couple other teachers here were there because we were nominated for the award. That was the first time I met you, and there was something about Scott's spirit that's just totally different. He wanted to move heaven and earth for Amanda. And I think that's just beautiful because he had looked for so long for a soulmate. And I knew when I met you, that's his mate, that's his person. And he was fortunate enough to meet his person. And for you bringing it to his life, I thank you for that. And Paulie, the same thing, we watched you grow up. He was so proud of you, everything that you would get accomplished. Like I said, I was across the hall. He was letting me know what Paulie was doing. Even after you left, we talked about what you were doing. You were working at Publix, and he was just so proud of you and the man that you had become. So I said all of that to say, the good book says, The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. And I believe your dad was a good man. And I believe his steps were definitely ordered by the Lord. It's a short period of time sometimes that we get to spend here on the earth. But it's not the time that we're here, it's what we do while we're here. So I can say definitely about Scott, he's a good man. His steps were ordered. And he showed what professionalism looked like. And for that, I'm sure that comes from your parents. He often talked about your dad. He talked with you about working with your dad. He wasn't just in the military, he wasn't just a teacher, but he was also a tradesman. I think their father worked in the phone industry, and Scott did that for many, many years. I think that had a lot to do with his meticulousness in his work, because that had to be done right or someone would get hurt. So sometimes if you know the background of people, you know why they're dogmatic. And his background, your parents, you talk about your mom, talk about living with your mom, how good your mom was to Polly. As I said, we spent a lot of time talking. You can look at a man's background and you can see why he is like he is. So for that, the Drive family, we thank you for sharing Scott with us. And we pray that his memories will continue to be with you as you live this life, and that his legacy will continue to live on.
I've known Scott for a long time, but he was but less than a year older than me, and I never let him forget that. So I want to know what changed from that clean-shaven, sharp-dressed man to Grizzly Adams, because that beard got longer, it got grayer, and I was wondering what was going on in school that was causing all this.
Paperwork.
I'm not an educator. I met Scott our sophomore year at Brandon High School, unfortunately. And Scott's involvement in my life was two aspects: high school, and then once he was divorced and moved back home. So there was a lot of gap in between there where I didn't know what was going on. For those of you who are under 30, we didn't have cell phones, internet, Facebook. So unless you wrote letters or had a telephone number, you did not have any contact with anybody. And I didn't have any contact with Scott for probably good 15, 18 years until he showed up with Paul at a judo class that I was assisting with. And I didn't know who he was. And he was very polite, and I just went with it. And like the following week, we went to, it was the end of the year, Christmas party. And I'm there with my family, and Scott comes in, and he's like asking my wife, ex-wife, hey, did Kevin tell you how we met? And I was like, no, why don't you tell her? Because I still don't know who this guy was. And it eventually starts telling stories from high school, and it just dawns on me, Scott! Oh my God! Because I hadn't seen him in so long. It was amazing. And so we reunited, and we shared a love for many things. Scott's a Christian man, and a conservative. And we had a passion for a lot of similarities, including sports. He was very avid and passionate about his sports. And we've gone through the trials and tribulations of dealing with sports. And we've had some rough times, we've had some great times, especially with hockey. And he became very passionate about hockey. I grew up in hockey land up north, so I had the benefit of being very educated and knowledgeable, and he was a novice until the Lightning came to town and started to embrace it. And he really enjoyed putting on the jersey and going to the games, and we had a great time. Scott was a car guy. He loved the classics, and we would debate over and over, but I did not have his knowledge. He was far more involved and knew the inners and outs of vehicles that I did not know. And so he was a joy to work with, but as others have stepped up here before and said that if you needed something, he was there for you. And we would go out of our way to work on cars together with some other friends. And some of the best moments, tearing apart his Nissan truck and the top of that engine and getting it done. You can't get those memories back. And nobody goes out of their way anymore to, it seems, to help out. And when there's a friend that's in need, you step up. I don't have the benefit of knowing the Scott that most of you here know. I don't even know aspects of that life, and let's just say he wasn't kind. So I was his sounding board as he was mine. And most of what he heard from me was with what was going on in my personal life, but the only thing I heard from him was his professional life. And I've heard many, many stories from different schools that he's been at, and where he has doubted himself on whether he wanted to continue as an educator. And we had these talks for hours on end, it seemed. And we had our dedicated time on Wednesdays that I'll miss. That was our time to talk. And but he was passionate about being an educator. But the students, the administration really tried him. And you may not have seen that side of him, but he took it personally because he wanted to make a difference, and he was getting stonewalled in many ways and trying to succeed. And I know he did succeed. And but what you saw, what you didn't hear, you didn't see behind the scenes was how it affected him, and it did. It had a great effect on him until Amanda came into his life and seemed to calm him down, and she put some order back into his life. And for that, I'm very grateful for him that he had that. I can't say enough about Paul. He never gave up on Paul. And I'm glad to see Paul succeeding. Paul had some tough times, and Scott never gave up on his son, and nor should he have. But that's the kind of guy he was. He was the kind of guy that looked after his family and friends. What he was involved in was the most important thing, and his job, which he loved. But it wasn't without difficulties, and everyone here probably can find it in themselves to understand some of those difficulties, what the teaching profession has. I applaud you for what you do. It's a difficult task, and but I know Scott was right there in the trenches with you. He would go to bat for you and with you, and he never gave up. So I apologize. So Scott will always be here with me. He's my brother, and I'll never forget him.
I'm sorry the microphone wasn't enough for you all hearing me back there, so I apologize for that. Thank you so much for that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Casilda Dantes. I'm the custodian at night. Mr. Dryer, he's a lovely man. I cannot express the word to tell you how good he was as a teacher. And I'm a custodian.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Joya was such a sweet soul, so I just want to sing this song. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. just time and near. I have already come. True grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home when we've been here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, with no less days to sing God praise than when we first begun.
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, praise God. That's beautiful. We're going to turn it over to the family to give them a chance to speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ms. Sanders, and I'm one of the resident educators at Chills. I met Mr. Dreyer last year, which was my first year here, when I decided to come aboard as a long-term sub. God knows what you need when you need it most. And so he gave me Mr. Dreyer. Some days I didn't know what to do or how to do it, but he was always there. Sanders, you need help? And before I would ask, he would come in with a paper. He would have it already printed out. Here, you can use this. And some days, he would come in because y'all know he had the master key, right? So he would pop in when you least expected him to. And some mornings he would put things on my desk. And one morning I was sitting at my desk and he just came in with his key. I said, Mr. Dreyer, you're gonna pop on here one morning and see something you don't want to see. Just joking, guys. But it was a pleasure having Mr. Dreyer. And again, I say to his family, thank you for allowing us to have him as long as we did. And I won't forget him. He's already missed because I tell you, there was no one that could clear the 400 hallway like me and Mr. Dreyer.
We'll invite Paul up to come speak, and I'm so grateful for. Did you want to go first? Okay. So Paul.
I just want to first say thank you all for coming out today. I may not remember all of you well, if at all, but that's not what matters. What matters is that you all remembered him, that he left an imprint on all of you, strong enough that no matter how far you had to go, no matter how short the drive was, no matter how long the plane ride was, you all came out here today to celebrate the life of my father. The man who, with any luck, helped you all out. He all thought of you. I heard stories of each and every one of you. I may not remember your names. I might not remember the experiences with you. But from both my extended family and from my blood family, from family, friends, those who were close and those who were far. I want to thank all of you for coming out today. Hopefully this rounds us out, and I thank you. That's all.
All right, so thank you so much. It's such beautiful words. And you see in a nutshell, just with what Paul being up here, just how great a man Scott is and was. And that's how it goes, you know. You can look at a person's children, look at the leftover that we have inside of ourselves and see just how great a person is. So we're going to go ahead and conclude this time of speaking and allow you all to fellowship together and partake of some food. And so we just want you to enjoy one another as we continue to reminisce. And although I did not have you talk to your shoulder partner, feel free to talk to folks as you are walking around and mingling and getting food, okay? All right, all minds are clear? Feel free to go help yourselves.